Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, I'll be changing the transmission fluid of the XK8. Earlier today I completed a series of preparation steps, and right now I'm completing the very last preparation step, which is drive the car for the purpose of warming up the transmission fluid before I drain it out. This is probably an optional step, but I prefer to do it. I'm using the iCarSoft CR Pro in order to monitor live data from the engine's computer. And the two parameters that I have pulled up are the engine coolant temperature and the transmission oil temperature. Let me pull up here to the side of the road and we can take a closer look at those. Engine coolant temperature sits at 83 degrees and transmission oil temperature is at 78, 79. At this point, the engine is more or less fully warmed up. The transmission oil has a little bit more to go, but it's more than warm enough at this point for me to continue the process. So I'll head back home, raise the car up in the air, and we'll get going. The transmission pan is in the very middle of the vehicle, with the drain plug being closer to the front of the vehicle. Conveniently located right here, easy to remove. Now, I have already made sure that I can loosen the fill plug. I made sure that the fill plug is not seized, because if it is seized and if I have problem removing it, I should not really be draining out the fluid. But my fill plug is operating properly, there's no problem, so I can go ahead there it goes. It looks a bit muddy, but it is not black. It's definitely brownish color. The plug itself is very clean. While the fluid is continuing to drain out, let's talk briefly about those preparation steps that I had completed before the drive. So the first thing I did was, both for the drain plug and the fill plug, I sprayed with brake parts cleaner. Brake parts cleaner to make sure that the area is free of debris and contamination before I remove the plugs. The other thing I did, of course, is I tried to loosen the fill plug to make sure that it's not seized up. That was okay. And the third step that I did, which turns out unsuccessful, I wrapped up the exhaust with this thermal fabric. It's a special fabric for thermal insulation, but it appears that the temperature of the exhaust got so high that it literally melted the fabric. I didn't know that this fabric does not resist this kind of heat. It looks like it's spec'd for lower temperatures. So this is a bit of a mess, so I'll have to clean this up. But the idea here was that this fabric would protect my hands as I'm trying to reach the fill plug and fill the fluid back up, which is right there where that 90-degree cutout is. That's exactly where the fill plug is located. It's been about an hour and the fluid is still very slowly dripping out. I'm not in a rush, I'll give it time to completely stop, but I wanted to share a quick tip here which you may find useful. If you have a way to raise the back of the vehicle without raising the front, you may want to do this and get the car in a position where the rear is propped up higher in the air. What this does is it allows more fluid to be to kind of flow towards the drain plug, the drain hole, and come out of the transmission. At least that was the case with me, because the drain hole is at the very front of the pan. So if you lift up the back, you'll get much more fluid out. And I checked that with a laser here. You can see how eventually the laser leaves the bottom of the vehicle, and then on this side you can see it here. There it is. Right, so the back is clearly lifted higher than the front, and this helps with getting a bit more fluid out of the pan. It's been about 2 hours now since I drained the fluid. The drip has just about stopped. There it is. The drain plug requires an 8mm hex adapter, H8, and I have wiped the drain hole. There's no more drip coming out. I can now reinstall. Oops. The torque requirements here are up to 33 Newton meters. I'm set up for 30 here, 30 Newton meters. So I can start tightening. There we go. That's all. It doesn't actually feel very tight, but that's all that's required. In the factory service manual, there's a recommendation that the gasket for the drain plug is changed before I reinstall the drain plug. Now, I didn't do that today, and here's the reason. The transmission holds about 10 liters of fluid. I was able to drain out about half of that. I cannot get the entire fluid out. About half of the fluid is held within the torque converter. So this is normal, this is expected, that's fine. Today I'm doing a drain and fill. I will drive like this for a few months, maybe a couple of months or so, and then I will do this process again, but at that time I will also take down the pan and I will change the transmission filter. At that point, when I reinstall the drain plug, I will put a new gasket. I just don't think that there's a need for new gasket. Now, this gasket looked in perfect condition. There's no damage or anything like that to it. It doesn't seem worn out. It's a silicone gasket. It looks in perfect shape. So I'm leaving the original gasket in place now. I will change it the second time when I do this service, which will be in a couple of months from now. A couple of notes before we start refilling. Most importantly, make sure you're perfectly level, both left and right, and front to back, right? You want the pan of the transmission to be completely level before you start refilling, so that you get the accurate amount of fluid in there. The other thing you may want to do, and probably now is a good point because the car is not running and the metal is not hot underneath, but oops, one sec. Now would be a good time to use your brake parts cleaner and clean this area, because we're not going here anymore. This is done. We will do nothing else here in this around this plug, so we might as well clean it now. The fill plug is located at the rear right corner of the transmission. You can sort of see it from here. This is the plug right here. And from underneath, you can also see it. It's located right above this 90-degree cutout. right over there. That is the fill plug. Now, to get it out, it requires the exact same 8mm hex, and you may be okay with a 3-inch extension. I was able to make it work with 2-inch extension. It actually worked better for me. So let me set that up and I'll show you what I have in mind. Here's the 3-inch extension, 2-inch extension, and the adapter. This works better for me, but you may be okay with the 3-inch as well. So I'll proceed with this setup. Alright, I'm connected. Here's how things look on this end. So this is between the exhaust and the heat shield. And now I can start loosening the plug. At this point I can probably just do it with my fingers. I'm going to disconnect the ratchet. So I've removed the ratchet and the plug is completely loose and easily movable just with my fingers. I'm going to proceed and take it out. I'll use both hands so that it doesn't fall out. Here it is. Looks extremely clean. I wanted to check how much fluid I have drained, and what I have here is 1.5 liters, and 1 liter for a total volume of 4 liters, and these are full to the very top, and this is 1 liter here. So 4 liters or a bit more than 4 liters of fluid have been drained out. Now keep in mind, I waited for over 2 hours and I raised the back of the vehicle additionally to get some additional volume of fluid to come out. If you don't do these steps, if you're not waiting for that long and you don't raise the back of the vehicle, you will probably get a little bit less than 4 liters in terms of volume that drains out. By the way, the fluid actually looks quite clean here on the paper. Very nice. Doesn't look abused, burnt, or anything like that. For 74,000 kilometers, this looks in pretty good shape. Alright, I have the hose in the fill hole connected. There it is. The hose travels to the side of the vehicle, and over here I have the fluid. I'll be using Pentosin ATF5, and as you can see here, let me find it, the Jaguar oil number JLM 20-38 is exactly what we need for this transmission, and I'll show you here a quick reference to the ZF documentation on this, where this exact Jaguar oil is specified. So I'm using Pentosin ATF5, same setup as what I used with the differential fluid change, and at this point I can start pouring. Alright, the fluid started dripping out and I pulled the hose out. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this little endoscope camera to get it close to the fill hole and try to verify if indeed the level of the fluid inside the transmission is at the level of the fill hole. I want to sort of visually confirm that. This camera is very low resolution. I think 720 pixels is the highest it could go, so the footage will not be great in any way, but for the purposes of confirming the level, it will do the job. So it does appear that the transmission is full. You can clearly see the level here. There it is. The fluid inside is at a level where it slowly overflows. Now that I know that the transmission is full, I have placed the plug back on right there, and I have the extension still attached so that I could easily turn it in and out. I haven't tightened it. This is just hand tight. Now, what needs to happen as the last step, and essentially the hardest step, is I need to start the engine and let the car idle. With the engine started, I have to monitor the temperature of the transmission fluid. Once the transmission fluid gets warmer than 30 degrees, I can open the fill hole and start adding more fluid. But I have to finish adding the fluid before the temperature reaches 50 degrees. So I have this interval to work with. So the idea is all of the additional fluid that I need to add must be done in this range. Hopefully I'll be able to do that fast enough. Essentially start the car. As soon as the transmission fluid is above 30, I start adding more. And as soon as it starts overflowing, I close the filler cap back while the car is still running and before the temperature has reached 50 degrees. Once I've closed the filler hole, I can then turn off the engine. Oh boy, the oil is at 42, 43 already. So I need to hurry up with the filling. Now, I need to, the one thing I forgot to mention is that I need to cycle through the gears. So foot on the brake, I need to go to drive, hold it here for a few seconds, then reverse, then park. And this is what's described in the manual as being sufficient. I'll do this one more time, and actually I'll go on the other side of the J-gate as well. Drive. I don't think this really would change anything here because the car is not in motion, but still. Neutral, reverse, park, and I'm at 44 degrees for transmission temperature. I need to hurry and open up the fill plug, add the fluid, and finish the process before I reach 50 degrees. Let's go do that now. Alright, I put in 2 more liters. These are empty for a total of 4. I have the drip. There it is. Slowly coming down. And the temperature is 49. Almost at 50. I need to get down under the vehicle and close the plug as soon as the drip slows down. Doing that now. Alright, the plug is closed. Here are the tools, and I poured a total of 4 liters back into the transmission. I thought I would need 6. I had bought 6 bottles, but it looks like 4 was enough. And with this, the drain and fill for the transmission fluid is complete. I'll be doing this again in a couple of months, but that time we'll be taking off the pan and changing the filter as well. Thank you, folks. Best of luck in your upcoming projects. Looking forward to see you again in the next video. Take care.